Why is it hanging out?
Yeah, it's open right now.
Passcode 422.
Mute. Can we mute everyone but Mosang?
Virgie, masyado mataas ang headroom mo. Kanya, pag yeah.
By a guy.
Is it a male or a female
Nagmo-monitor ng
cousin?
mga
Who's this guy?
comments.
Your cousin.
By 4 years.
Ang sweet!
Hello.
Si,
He was 10 to 12 when you were 6 to 8 years old.
Bakit live in 39 minutes?
Magazine.
we'll share the
I've
link.
also shared that
Mali yung countdown. Huh?
Dr. Valbuena.
For example,
Okay, also, Ramiro. Are you gonna be dropped? We're gonna stop. Okay. Okay. So what
Americans, so y'all
very good. What does for instance are the president of
Okay?
passcode 422? Hi Virgie, I can see you, but
On
you're on the
Virgie, masyado mataas ang headroom mo. Kanya, pag yeah.
By a guy.
Is it a male or a female cousin? It's this guy. Your cousin.
That's why we filmed
Ang sweet!
this show.
Si,
He was 10 to 12 when you were
The
6 to 8
Asian
years old.
The owners, as well as yung mga providers.
Magazine.
we'll share the link.
And
Also
there
share that link
are,
on my
in the
Facebook.
US, there are more than 10 million adults.
Dr. Valbuena. And then I'll go on with Virgie.
you can, for example,
Okay, also Ramiro. Are you not we're gonna stop?
One
Okay.
influence.
So what do you very good. For example,
Kita makapag-live.
president of passcode 422. Hi Virgie, I can see you, but you're on muted. Can hear you, Dr.
Virgie, masyado mataas ang headroom mo. Kanya, pag yeah.
By a guy.
Is it a male or a female cousin? This guy.
It's showing the already. It's good.
Ang sweet! Si,
He was 10 to 12 when you were 6 to 8 years old.
It's showing the already. Man, maiksilan yung ano ko. Pasok agad yung picture ni Mosang. Pasok agad yung picture ni Mosang ha. So I can introduce her.
Dr. Valbuena. I'll go on with Virgie.
you can, for example,
Okay, also Ramiro. Are you gonna be dropped? We're gonna stop. Okay. Okay. So what?
Hi everyone and welcome to FMagazine Live. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a hump day, it's Wednesday, and today we will be discussing a very important subject matter. It's about domestic violence. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we felt here at F, we felt the importance of discussing domestic violence to increase awareness amongst the Filipino American, Phil-Asian communities here in Arizona. and in the world as well. At sa mga kababayan po namin sa Philippines, we also would like to share this show to everyone so we would know and we would have more education about domestic violence. In the US, there are about 10 million adults who experience domestic violence annually. One in every four female and one in every 10 male ang affected ng domestic violence. So, tonight, sasamahan po uli ako ng aking beautiful co-host na palaging nandyan lang. And you've met her before. You've seen her in the shows ng ABS-CBN like Taysin ng Tahanan, Esperanza, Gulong ng Palad. And right now, she's actually nasa set po siya. Nagtatrabaho sa Philippines. It's about 9-10 in the morning. And she's gonna be joining us again to help me out. Miss Lady M. Mosang!
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Am I right? Good evening, Arizona and America. Good morning, Philippines. Work na ba kayo? I just want to greet all my staff who's watching right now. Hindi ko ano yung camera and all the friends here. I'm very happy for this topic because this topic really amazes me as a woman, bilang babae. So I'm inviting everyone to tune in and learn more about this very delicate topic that we really need to learn, to learn and kailangan mapakinggan natin dahil sa totoo lang, hindi lang tayong babae na abuse. Pati rin palang mga lalaki. Do you believe that? I cannot.
Hindi ko rin nga, parang hindi siya masyado no pagdating sa lalaki. It's like when you talk about domestic violence, parang medyo bias tayo na pang babae lang ito. Diba?
Oh,
you feel
pero
but
when I'm reading, when I was reading the article about it, I realized at one point in my, kasi we're both strong women, right? In a way, we were able to abuse men. Probably not physically, but mentally. Okay?
Yes,
Pero we're not aware of it.
exactly.
Yung lalim ng grounds, we're not aware of it. Yeah. But it, and I realized, oh yeah, at one point pala, I abused men. Okay, sorry.
But
Yung
what
ganun pala. So I have to
rise to the abuse, Lady M? Diba? We'll know about that pag in-introduce natin.
more.
Introduce our guest for tonight. And you know what? We're gonna have nosebleeds tonight because majority of our guests, resource speakers, don't speak our
Tagalog mo.
guest for tonight.
Lady
And you know what?
M, so
We're gonna have
ready ka na ba
nosebleeds tonight because majority of our guests,
I
resource
think my
speakers, don't speak our
Tagalog.
I only loaded
guest
4
for tonight.
gigabytes, so I will
So
tell
we're
you
gonna
when I
have
come.
nosebleeds tonight
My English
because
only 5
majority of our
gigabytes.
guests,
I
resource
think
speakers, don't speak our
I only loaded 4 gigabytes.
So we're gonna have nosebleeds
My
tonight
English
because
only right now
majority of our
gigabytes.
guests,
I
resource
think
speakers, don't speak our
I only loaded 4 gigabytes.
So we're gonna have
Especially online only right now gigabytes. I think I only loaded 4 gigabytes. Especially online only right now gigabytes. And at least I only loaded 4 gigabytes. Especially online only right now gigabytes. And at least I only loaded 4 gigabytes.
He attended the
Ayan.
University of
Ayan, ako na
Oklahoma.
yan. He attended he
Correct.
earned
He
BS in
attended the
Ayan.
University
He
of
was ayan, ako na
Oklahoma.
yan. He attended he
Correct.
earned
He
BS
attended
in
the
ayan.
University
He
of
was ayan, ako na
Oklahoma.
yan. He attended
Correct.
he earned
He
BS in
attended the
ayan.
University
And
of
ayan, ako na
Oklahoma.
yan. He attended
Correct.
earned
He
BS
How
attended
are
the
you?
ayan.
Thank you
University
And
of
for
ayan, ako na
Oklahoma.
yan. He
participating
attended
today.
he
Correct.
earned
He
BS
attended.
in
Hello.
ayan.
Welcome,
Thank you
welcome,
And
for
Dr.
ayan, ako na
Vavani
yan.
to
He
F
attended
Magazine. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's
Welcome, welcome,
6:20 in the
Dr.
evening
Vavani
here.
to
The sun is
F
going
Magazine.
down
How
earlier and
are
earlier
you?
every day, but I'm doing great. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome,
6:20 in the
Dr.
evening
Vavani.
here.
Very
The
good.
sun is
So,
going
Doctor, we'd
down
like you
Grabe,
to
Doc,
earlier
your
and
tell.
earlier every
accent.
day, but
Well, he was
I'm doing
born
great.
here
Thank you.
in
6:20 in the
Oklahoma.
evening here. The sun is
Tama ba?
going down
Grabe, Doc, your
Baltimore.
accent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but I
actually,
know Tagalog.
is that Tagalog, Doctor? Tama
Oh,
ba?
siyempre
Grabe, Doc.
naman.
Yes.
Yeah,
Nakausap ko siya na
yeah, but
Tagalog siya and
I
he misses
know
Damangga
Tagalog.
in Manila.
Review. Oh,
Oo,
that's
Damangga
right.
in
The
Bagoong.
bagoong.
Nakausap ko siya na Tagalog
Mm-mm.
siya and he misses
Yes.
Ayan mo, Doc, sa ating mga listener, listener tuloy, I thought I was in the radio.
That's right.
To all
The
our viewers,
bagoong.
padalan po natin si Dr. Balbuena ng mangga, kahit picture lang. Kasi it's pandemic, so nandito tayo mag-shipping, ha? To all our viewers, padalan po natin si Dr. Balbuena ng mangga,
Okay,
kahit
okay.
picture lang. Kasi it's pandemic, so nandito
So,
tayo
So, yeah, I
mag-shipping.
didn't know
Doctor,
if you had.
I'd like to ask you to tell us and enlighten us about domestic violence, its forms,
So,
and stuff
yeah, I
that
didn't
we
know if you
need
had.
to know, the basic info about it.
Sure. I think that there's this perception about domestic violence and abuse and how it's really, male maybe abusing a female or a husband abusing a wife, but we're really talking about all ages here, all ages of abuse, from children to adolescents to adults to elderly. There's emotional abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's physical abuse, there's neglect, there's elderly abuse. It's, this is a great month to really educate and empower our friends and families about what this really means for my family in the Philippines, who I'm first generation Filipino here in Arizona. Did my medical school there in the Philippines, and just to clarify, some of the positions I'm I'm founder and owner of my own wellness center, and I'm with Buena Vista Health and Recovery Centers. It's a multi-state institution that I'm managing. So, but yeah, just to clarify that one piece. But yes, that's in a nutshell. Yeah, it's really a loaded emotional topic for many people, especially people who've experienced abuse in their life. Emotional topic for many people,
Doc, I
especially
have
people
question.
who've experienced
Among
abuse in their life.
the cases you were talking about, which is the hardest? Doc, I have question.
Well, I think I
Among
it would
the
be hard
cases
to
you were
say
talking about, which is the
one
hardest?
particular age group or
Doc, I
one
have
particular
question.
person is harder than the next. I think naturally the instinct again is when you are dealing with children that might be abused, and that kind of hits home for a lot of people who have their own children. Um, yeah, my experience in treating children, it's a prominent thing here in the U.S. and I think worldwide. And I think it's with all the things that are happening right now in the world, sometimes people forget about what's really happening sometimes. So, I think, again, I think every victim is equal. I think some of the more difficult ones are the children to kind of manage.
Doc, what about yung domestic violence during the pandemic?
Sure. And, there's
What
been
about
some mixed reports on that. However,
yung domestic
it's,
violence during
you
the
can
pandemic?
you can actually think about social distancing and places shutting down and, you got to stay at home. That's really a recipe for people that are victims to be in a place where there's prolonged abuse. I think there's been a rise in that, and there's been a rise in violence altogether during the pandemic, just because people that don't know what's going to happen in the future, they tend to be more anxious. They tend to be more
Disturb.
angry. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Huh?
Pero bakit tok sa kulungan walang masyadong violence? Charot. Na, yun, I mean, the real kulungan.
Right, right, right.
Pero bakit tok sa
Yan,
kulungan
yan, di
walang
ba?
masyadong
Why
violence?
inside
Charot.
the house,
Na, yun, I
it's
mean, the
like,
real kulungan.
di ba? Parang
Right, right.
Lumaki siya eh.
yan,
Either
yan,
talaga.
di ba?
Pero I was
Why
just like
inside
wondering,
the house,
why in
it's
kulungan
like,
walang masyadong
di ba?
violence? Why in the house there's violence?
Lumaki siya eh.
Nagsasawa ka na ba sa mukha ng kasama mo?
Pero I was just like
Sorry.
wondering, why in
Pero I
kulungan,
think,
walang
doctor,
masyadong
is it
violence?
like
Why in the
one of
house
the
there's
reasons why we
violence?
don't see a lot of, or like there's not a surge of domestic violence in the data and statistic reported here in the US? It's because yun na, social distancing, we're not going out. So the people who are supposed to take on these symptoms are not there to make the report. Do you think that's one of the reasons also
That's
why
one of the reasons, and the other reason is also that the resource for people that usually may reach out for domestic violence shelters or hotlines, the resource for service has been consumed by COVID-19, and so you have a lack of resource. It's not as prominent. You have businesses that are shutting down, including some of these domestic violence shelters. So that's a reason.
good? So, doctor, I want to bring in to our screen one of our guest speakers. Actually, she will share her story. And I've known this lady for like more than 10 years. I wasn't aware that she actually went through domestic violence. She's a community leader. She's very strong woman, and she's an entrepreneur of Brown Box Packaging and Levine CrossFit. She's happily married now with two beautiful daughters. I'd like to welcome Miss Virgie Brown. She's happily married now with two beautiful daughters. Hi, Virgie. You have to unmute.
Oh, hello.
Hi, good morning, Miss Virgie.
Good
Hi,
morning,
Virgie.
Lady
You have
M.
to Arizona. Thank you for being
Hello.
here. Virgie, can you
Hi,
share
good
us what
morning, Miss
happened? Anong
Virgie.
nangyari sa'yo
Good
dati?
morning, Lady M.
Ayan.
I was I was a victim of domestic violence relationship with my live-in
Ayan.
boyfriend for 2 years.
Is he Filipino or American?
He's a Filipino.
Filipino. Ayan.
So
Iba rin kasi ang domestic violence ng Pinoy. May kahalong. Pero
right.
pag American, direct siya bugbog agad.
Ganun, ba't mo alam yan?
Alam rin
Pero
yan.
pag
Well,
American,
na-observe ko lang na-observe ko lang talaga kasi, I watch
Ganun, ba't mo alam yan?
films and then some of my
Alam rin
friends
yan.
na biktima rin ng ganyan. Talagang nare-realize ko yung difference pagka yung mga lalaki na magkaibang nasyon. Iba yung paraan talaga. Biktima rin ng ganyan. So, Miss Virgie, tell us about it. How did it happen?
Well, my boyfriend is kind of, he has like two personalities. He's drunk, and I think during that time I didn't know anything about drugs, but I didn't know that he was also taking drugs. So when he's
Mhm.
drunk and high, he totally changed a different person, and he started just hitting me for no reason. And even like one time we went with a friend, we went out in a bar, we're just sitting in a table and watching, drinking our thing, and then he just suddenly like reached in front of me and start slapping me, and I didn't know why, just because he got high. and he was really drunk, and that's the reason during that time I didn't really understand it because he's very nice, like you said, the Filipino malambing eh. Pag walang sumpong
How old are you
malambing.
then?
I was 26.
Yeah. Bakit,
I was
Dr.
How old are
Balbuena,
you
bakit
then?
hindi mo alam? Pag nasa abusive relationship ka, kung ikaw yung naaabuso, you don't, bakit, why is that? Balbuena,
You
bakit
then?
hindi mo
Yeah,
alam?
I
Pag
think
nasa
it's
abusive relationship ka, kung ikaw yung
the reason why
naaabuso, you
people may
don't,
not
bakit,
know that they're getting
why is that? Balbuena,
abused.
bakit
It's
hindi mo alam?
I
Pag
think
nasa
especially
abusive relationship
for
ka, kung ikaw
partners,
yung
you
naaabuso,
know,
you don't,
whether
bakit,
it be
why is
hetero
that?
or
Why is that?
same-sex partners, it really has no boundary. But part of the there's a dynamic of the abuser and the victim, how they complement each other, and it's kind of hard to separate. There's a dynamic. So that's there's a lot of reasons why someone may not know, but I think that's kind of hard to separate. There's a
So
dynamic
And
of
is
that's,
it
so
also
you
there's
mean
a
because
lot of
doctor?
that
abuser and the
you
victim.
love the person very much that you words,
So you mean, doc, being a victim and an abuser is also a relationship?
Well, it's a bad one. It's definitely
So
a bad
you mean, doc,
relationship, but it
being
is a
a
relationship. Yeah,
victim
but
and
they,
an
but
abuser is also a
there's a little bit
relationship?
of a compliment there. Well, it's a bad one. It's definitely a bad
You mean, doc,
relationship, but it
being
is a
a
relationship. As
victim
Fleur
and
had
an
said,
abuser is also a
there's a little bit of
relationship?
a compliment there. Well, it's a bad one. It's definitely a bad
You mean, doc,
relationship, but it
being
is a
a
relationship. You can look
victim
at Fleur
and
had
an
said
abuser is also a
there's a little bit of
relationship?
a compliment there. Well, it's a bad one. It's definitely a bad
You mean, doc,
relationship, but it
being
is a relationship. You can look at
victim
Fleur
and
had
an
said
abuser is
some of
also a
those.
relationship?
Sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't
Yeah.
really care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria for being an abuser and victim. You can look at they don't really
Yeah.
care whether some of those sometimes you look at some of the criteria. Was that me or what? I didn't know.
I don't know what happened.
He just got
Oh,
kicked out.
I think the
Was
time
that
was
me or
having
what? I
technical
didn't know.
problem
I don't know what happened.
there.
He just got
Oh,
kicked
I'll wait
out.
for my
oh, I
turn.
got lost. I think the time
Was that
was.
me
Sorry,
or what? I
Doc.
didn't
Ang
know.
ganda pa
I
naman ng
don't know
topic
what
natin
happened.
there.
He just got kicked
I'll
out.
wait for my
Oh, I
turn.
got lost. I think the time
Was that
was.
me or
Sorry,
Nawala.
Doc.
I didn't
Ang
know.
ganda pa
I
naman ng
don't know
topic
what
natin
happened.
nawala. Pati si Fleur,
I'll wait for my turn.
nawala. I think the time
Was that
was.
me or
Sorry,
Nawala.
Doc.
I didn't
Ang
know.
ganda pa
I
naman ng
don't know
topic
what
natin
happened.
nawala.
He just
Pati
got
si
kicked
Fleur,
I'll
out.
wait for my turn.
nawala. I think papainit pa
Was that
naman na
me
yung
or
topic
what?
Sorry,
I
Doc.
didn't
Ang
know.
ganda pa
I
naman ng
don't know
topic
what
natin
happened.
Oo, may
nawala. Pati
sabi.
si
I'll
Flora,
wait for my turn.
Biglang nawala.
I think papainit pa
Was that
naman na
me
yung
or
topic
what?
Oo.
natin.
Hi,
Ang
Virgie.
ganda pa
I
naman ng
don't know
topic
what
natin
Good
happened.
morning,
nawala. Pati si
Abby.
Flora,
Biglang
nawala.
nawala.
I
Good
think
morning.
Good morning,
papainit
Virginia.
pa naman na yung topic
Oo.
natin.
Hi,
Ang
Virgie.
ganda
Don't know what happened.
Morning time. Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Papainit pa
Virginia.
naman na yung tawag dyan.
Yes. Nagulat din ako. Parang morning time. Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa
Virginia.
agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Parang morning time. Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa
Virginia.
agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Sometimes, serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa
Virginia.
agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Sometimes, serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa
Virginia.
agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Sometimes, serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Sometimes, serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa
Virginia.
agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Sometimes, serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala.
Good morning,
Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Sometimes, serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Serious talaga.
Yes, oo nga. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako.
Serious talaga.
Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano. Nagulat din ako. Biglang nawala. Hinanap ko pa agad ang ano.
So, saan ba tayo naputol? Hindi nga natin alam. In fact, we didn't even know that we were not able to we were not heard by you guys. So, ulitin na lang natin siguro yung sa huli kong tanong um, wala pa si Mosang, hinantay namin si Mosang, paano ka nakaalis? Sabi mo, tinulungan ka ng kaibigan mo.
Yeah, tinulungan ako ng kaibigan ko. Actually, she physically removed me from the apartment where we were living at. Because it was very hard for me to leave because you feel like you love a person and trying to give them chances that hopefully will change for you. But it never happened. I didn't realize that until a friend of mine forcefully removed me from the apartment and told me you can't do that.
Okay, that's good. So, paano naman kaya yung mga very isolated, in isolation sila, wala silang masyadong kaibigan, doctor, sino kaya yung pwede tumulong sa kanila?
So, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Like, if they really don't have any trusted friends, who can they run to?
It's a good question. And, there are a number of domestic violence hotlines you can call. And there's an organization here in Arizona that, specializes in child abuse and even elderly abuse. APS, Adult Protective Services, Child Protective Services. But again, without the victim, don't call it victim, without the victim actually understanding like what they won't not even think about reaching out to someone. So it's sometimes if you're alone a lot and you don't, sometimes it takes
yung message mo, Virgie Brown, before we let you go? Thank you again so much for sharing your story. Ano yung mensahe mo para sa mga kababaihan na nasa posisyon mo noon in an abusive relationship?
And so, even men and women, I think there's also men that in one of these abuse, but just ask for help. There's so many people out there who are willing to help you, family, friends, and there's a lot of organizations nowadays that also help with abuse victims. So just ask for help. It is very hard, but you have to be strong and just get out before it's too late for you. And that's what I did. I'm glad I did.
Thank you so much, Miss Virgie Brown, and really, really appreciate your story. We'll see you soon and take care and be safe out there.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Now I want to introduce our next guest speaker, and he's also gonna share his story. He's actually one of our community leaders here in Arizona. Again, I was surprised to hear her story. Behind the scene, he actually told me what happened. He's the immediate past president of Phoenix Asian American Lions Club and the president of the Military Veterans Family Group. Please all welcome Mr. Ron Smith.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. And it's a pleasure, but also a scary. I've been through, so many years quietly behind doors, and it's nice to share because I imagine there's a lot of other people out there going through the same thing. I was previously married, and I kind of take a look at it today that if I didn't go through the problems and issues and violence, I would have been in a different place in my life, and I would have never met my wife of today. So I feel extremely blessed, even though I had to go through some terrible experiences to get to this point. My wife and I, we would go out and have a few drinks, and I would stop and she wouldn't. And it got to a point to where I noticed that she was yelling at me, trying to start arguments, hitting me and such, and not really realizing that she was just drinking. And another point is I looked in our closet and I found a huge black trash bag of empty liquor bottles. So she got to the point where she was drinking alone, and like one of your other people on here, she was so sweet when she was sober. And knowing that she had a problem, I wanted to help her get better. So I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous with her. I was going to Al-Anon. I was trying to do different things to fix the situation. But in the meantime, she would get drunk and she beat up my sister-in-law. And my family got to the point to where they said, we're not going to have a relationship with you as long as you're in the relationship with her. But then she would get sober and cry and say, I'm so sorry, I need help, I want to get better. And, I was a leader in northern Arizona where I was living. And sadly, I'd gotten a couple phone calls from police friends that she had.
Ron, we cannot, Cynthia Gurton is also watching and she said that we cannot hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it better?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you, Miss Cynthia.
So, I realized I was becoming an enabler, trying to help. And having, when she would get pulled over by the police, they would call me and ask me to pick her up. instead of having to go through the process of and the fear of getting arrested. And then I got to the point to where if I noticed she was drinking, her son, my stepson, I would immediately take us to a hotel and say, we're not going to be a part of your drinking. We'll help you with your sobriety. And one day I came back and every window in our house was broken, every mirror, every wall had holes in it, all the TVs were broken. I came back and she said that we've been broken into. At that point, I felt sad every time she wanted help, and it was hard for me to say, I can't do this anymore, I'm leaving you. But I asked my friends the last time she got pulled over, she actually beat up the police and she spent 6 months in jail. They knew of other past incidents. So I filed my divorce papers while she was in jail because it was easier for me not to have to look at her and ask, when she's asking for forgiveness and asking for me to help her and so really, really tragic that I find somebody that I truly believe she wanted help. She came at me with a knife other times, and I stopped telling my family and friends what was happening because I know they would do anything in their power to try to get me out of that relationship, and I wanted to help her get better.
Ron,
So-
how hard
Go
is
ahead.
it for you to share your story to us now? Like you're a man, you're strong, Tell us how you feel about sharing your story to all of us about domestic
Yes.
violence.
In addition to that, Sir Ron, how were you able? Where were you able to get the strength and the courage for you to be able to endure that long-term relationship, facing the woman you love and everything that she did to you? Where did you get your courage?
It lasted 5 years, and the courage was, and that I married her, and for me, marriage is forever. Alcoholism is a disease, so I didn't want to leave somebody because of a disease that they had. I wanted to do everything in my power, but then I got to the point to where I realized that there was nothing I can do, there was nothing the police could do, there was nothing that anybody could do except for her to change. And it's hard to share this as, I've known Fleur for many years and I don't share my story, but I know that there are a lot of people out there and, oftentimes you can see the bruises, but when it's emotional or somebody giant like me who doesn't bruise very easy, people don't know. And, I still have so many stories that it's not worth sharing because the few stories can see the tragedy and the danger of being in a relationship. I was sleeping one night and woke up to her punching me in the face.
Sir Ron, I want to tell you something that you're one of the heroes. And we would like to thank you for sharing your stories and your courage to let us know, to let you be heard by some men. I have a question to Dr. Balbuena. Doc, is it possible that if you were a victim, psychologically, nakakaroon din ba ng effect sa kanila or what they're going through?
What was the last part of that question? Sorry.
If you are a victim of an abusive relationship, does the victim also become psychologically affected? And how deep is that?
Well, yeah. Just a quick question. And Ron, thank you for sharing those sensitive stories. I think it's going to empower a lot of people that are watching right now. So thank you. Yeah, indeed. Just like what Ron was saying, is that you can see the bruises will disappear. The fractures will heal, but there's been internal damage that someone needs to come to terms with so they can proceed further. It's part of the recovery phase, and it's part of moving forward. So it really hits inside, and you may carry it with you for a very long time. But there are, I think if someone, the education piece and making you self-aware that this is not your fault. And I know Ron was dealing with a partner who had some substance abuse issues. So of course there's a lot of compassion on your end, Ron, that you wanted to help your loved one. And I deal with addiction all day, every day, and I treat people like that. And I know how the love and strength that they want to give their family members and the people they love, they'll do anything for them, even if it means their own suffering.
Yes. But
Guys, I realize now that at least in America, you guys are very lucky. Unlike in the Philippines, our culture is really different. Whether if you are a women abuse or a men abuse, our culture is really different. We cannot go, for one, we're one of the poorest country, right? So we cannot afford to go to a lawyer, and the institutions here are not fully equipped to help Filipino or men abuse. So I think it's the awareness that really matters, and the willingness and the choice to be well and to get help, right? So Ron made a good choice. Being abused for me is not an option. It's a choice for you to get out. Well, I know it's really hard, and you guys, Ron and Virgie, made a good choice for them to have better life. I know love is really love, and I heard one priest yesterday in a mass, and he said, love and disappointments come together, right?
And one of the things that I feel God blessed me with is realizing that everybody is their own person. I didn't have that fear going into another relationship that person was going to be abusive. That it's a unique thing, and it's out there, but you should give somebody else a chance. You shouldn't have, and it's hard to say sometimes, but you shouldn't stop yourself from being in a relationship because you've been hurt in one in the past.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. I'd like to bring in with us tonight also is another male victim of domestic abuse, and his story started when he was like 6 years old, and the perpetrator was a relative of his. He was only 6 years old when he was sexually molested by a male cousin of his here in the U.S. who was the perpetrator was like 4 years older than him. So the male cousin was about 10 years old. Now he runs a media company. You know what? I think he's in the meeting and he disappeared. I was about to call him, and he's not here with us anymore. Because we had some technical difficulties, and he was in our waiting room, and now he's gone. I'd like to call in some of our resource people, and maybe Iman can help us get our next guest, Ramiro. If he can come back in, we're gonna put him on board with this session. But would it always be hard if you're a male victim, Dr. Valbuena?
Well, yeah, it is. they have always this numbers, statistics, and everything on if women are more abused than men. There is that socialized and cultural piece that uh, stereotypes that men don't get abused, but it happens, and I think it's just not talked about as much. And Yeah, I think harder for maybe others to understand, maybe not so much on the actual victim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So, with that, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Valbuena, for giving us your expertise on the topic and your parting words. So, what would be your advice to men and women who are in this situation? There's
Right.
no excuse to be abused, and yet it happens. It's a pandemic within the pandemic.
Right. No, I think that this is great, Fleur, that you put this on, and I think the only words I have is that if you are blessed to have family members, good friends, and they say something to you, and it's always good to say in hindsight that you could have done this and you should have done that, but I think that the best thing that I can express right now is educate yourself, your family members, everyone around you about what abuse is, and find your common ground there and move forward.
And Ramiro is actually here, and I'd like you to would you spare us another 5 to 10 minutes of your time, Dr. Valbuena, while we bring in Mr. Ramiro Russell. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to F Magazine. We're so excited to hear about your story. I actually introduced you ahead and told the viewers that you were only 6 years old when you encountered sexual molestation. And tell us what happened and how it affected you moving forward to where you are right now. I know you're running a media company and soon to become a doctor.
Yeah. So my first encounter with that was I was 6 years old. It was a family member who molested me for 2 years. Started when I was 6. He was older than me. And I just didn't really know what was going on. I mean, I knew it was wrong in the back of my mind, but of course, you're told by someone who's older than you to keep it a secret. So I lived with it I lived with it for many years, and I didn't really break the silence until he had grown up older. He was getting married, and he wanted me to be in his wedding, and I was adamant about not being anywhere around him. I didn't want to be anywhere around him and his new family. And I remember family members coming to me. My mom, my biological mom, before she passed away, was like, "Why don't you want to spend time with your cousin?" And when I finally told her, she didn't believe me, and so I kept that with me for so many years. So I felt almost guilty, like this happened to me. You don't believe me. I mean, I wanted someone to actually come to me. So I dealt with that. And domestic violence, as you well aware, I dealt with that with my ex-wife, not my wife now, but my ex-wife. I dealt with that for about a year until I built up the strength to actually leave. So, and going back, if you Google domestic violence and look at the statistics, it's like over 40% of the victims are men, and they don't speak, they don't talk, because it almost blemishes your masculinity. How do you allow this woman to jump on you? So going back, when I did the research and just wanted to analyze myself, because if you look at the libraries or self-help books, there really isn't many self-help books for men. They're all for women. We really don't have many books for us. So I had to read a book for a woman and then take out the word she and put he in it. And that kind of helped me. So what I learned was, you have to think, there's so many women who are single moms and they're raising boys. And what I learned is this woman raises this child in her current environment, and that boy will grow up 3 ways: a misogynist, an abuser, like he sees, or very passive, never putting his hands on a woman. So I grew up very passive because I was always raised by strong women. The only men in my life who were really strong was my biological great-grandfather. He was the only dominant male positive role figure in my life. And then when he passed away, the women kind of took over. And you know, then my dad got remarried, and then my current, my mom now. So I had to deal with that for many years. And it took me like almost 24 years to actually talk about domestic violence. Because it really hurt me, because I can really identify with all of the women who live in a household, who don't have a voice, who don't say anything. And I'm very protective of that, because I look at men and I'm like, why would you do that to a woman? So when I do a lot of motivational speaking, I go to schools, I go to prisons, and typically I separate the masses. And when I talk to women, I try to remind them of their true strength. I try to remind them that they are true champions. They are true warriors. It's interwoven into the fabric of who they are as women. They just forgot. And then when I talk to men, I try to tell them or to remind them that vulnerability is a sign of strength. The moment you can go, this is me, this is what happened to me, it shows your strength. So I had to look at myself in the mirror when I was dealing with molestation, wrongfully convicted, abuse. My ex-wife, I was stabbed. I was in the hospital, and it took a psychiatrist and his staff to come in the room after I was bleeding in the hospital, and they were like, we have read case studies about men like you. You have the characteristics of a battered woman. Why do you stay? And back and forth banter went on, and I remember saying, I was willing to sacrifice my happiness for the well-being of my future children, because I didn't have any kids at the time. So going back, when I had to analyze everything that happened to me, raised by a single mom, you know, surrounded by abusive. Go ahead.
Ramiro, is your mom American or Filipino?
My biological mom, she was mixed. She passed away, but my stepmom, who raised me, she's Filipino. That's all I know. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So was it like any influence being raised by a Filipino mom for being passive and not being assertive of your rights and reporting what you've been going through to authorities?
Oh no, actually on the contrary, you know, being raised, you know, Filipino, that taught me to actually identify with my strength, because, you know, I saw that my titos and my titas, they're very strong individuals, and I saw that in my Asian community around people who I was raised with, the women really dominated. Like my mom she's 4'10", and when she walks into the room, we're like, oh shoot, here comes mom. But when my dad came in the room, like, okay, here's dad. You know, because she was real quiet, except when she got mad. You know, she commanded that respect when she walked into the room. And then when I got remarried, you know, everybody assumed that I was going to marry a Filipina. But my wife now, she's from Malaysia. She's Thai and Indian. So they were like, oh, okay, she still eats with her hands. We're still good. But on a serious note, it took me a while to actually talk about it, because it really hurt me to see women suffer and to see men suffer that wouldn't talk. They just don't say anything. So I lived with that, with those demons for many years, until my wife now, she was like, you gotta tell your story. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. So fast forwarding, I left California, was living in Texas, was training athletes, a couple of NBA players, a lot of NBA wives, celebrities, politicians. I'm teaching martial arts. I'm on TV. Fox, NBC hired me. And my wife was like, you need to tell your story before someone else tells it. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. So the day I told my story, people were like, you? I'm like, yeah. And they gave me a bigger platform to actually speak, because they were like, you need to speak, because many men won't come up. And if a woman sees that you experienced this, and you can actually talk to her and talk to these other men, you can actually break that cycle if you think about it. So I know we have a doctor online, so this my observation as a small child, girls are raised with dolls, be a family, nurturing, to care. Boys, what do we have? Trains, cars, destruction, army. We don't talk about our feelings and emotions. We keep them bottled in. Being raised by women, I learned how to communicate more, but I'm still a man. But that got me in trouble because there are some women right now who knows that a man won't put his hands on her, and she'll use that to her advantage. Not all women, some. So again, go ahead.
I have a question, Mr. Ramiro. You know what? I'm very glad, you know, because with you, with all the process, you were able to speak, and you're really good at it. I have a question to Dr. Balbuena. Is there, as I was watching Sir Ron and Sir Ramiro, I realized that there's a category of men having choices for them not to speak and to speak. Is that possible psychologically? Is it part of being abused, though?
You mean why some males may express and some may not? Is that your question? Or?
Yeah. Well, kasi napansin when I
Nosebleed, girl?
That's good. Napapansin mo ba, Doc? Sa pwede, naintindihan mo sa Tagalog, di ba? At ay,
I think we frozen. No, I think that, Ramiro, thank you for that, by the way. I mean, it's a very, I know, sensitive subject, but, as the more you talk about it, it actually empowers you more and makes you yourself and others smarter and more knowledgeable about everything. So, there's a socialization and a culture with males, and that's the barrier there, where males don't express themselves. You're not supposed to express yourself like a woman, and then there are stereotypes, and you can go on and on about why there's these barriers for males, but it's like you said, if you were raised with women who express themselves, and that's how your upbringing was, I mean, you express yourself, and I think for the males, again, it is I think speaking up, you're right, that there's actually just as many men that are abused than women, and you just hear more about the females more, and it's just a culture, basically.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
How important is it to seek professional help? Ramiro and Ron, you can answer.
Oh, I think it's very important to seek help. I mean, you should seek help. I know in the beginning, when you're in the mess, you really can't go, oh, I need help. You actually need to come to terms with yourself to get help, because I remember the moment I left, because my ex-wife, I'm not going to say any names to protect the innocent, but she was a lawyer and involved in some unethical activity, and I had to be hushed. So I was wrongfully convicted and spent a couple years, and I was in San Quentin, and a woman got me off. So I didn't have trust issues. So I had that time to process my feelings and to write everything down. So I think it's very important to seek help. So I think I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. But seeking help is very important. But some people don't know how. So I think people like us, this platform that you have, other platforms that I may have, this is a good avenue to get people to go, if it happened to him, I can seek help too. What do you think, Doctor?
I totally agree, Vero. And again, these platforms and what you do on the side as well, and some of your ventures too, it empowers people. So this good educational talk is, I think, a key, especially for this month. It's an awareness, but it really should be for every month.
Yeah, you're right.
You're
right.
Good stuff.
I believe I really didn't get professional help. Ramiro was sharing that I was in an abusive relationship for 5 years. And I knew 4 years into the relationship that I was being abused, and I was trying to help my wife get better, and going to professional help for her and going to Al-Anon for me. but the 5 years of going through that, after the last few years, I knew that she wasn't going to get better. My problem was taking somebody that I loved, even though she was abusive and I didn't want to be with her romantically anymore or anything else. I loved her. I didn't want to throw her aside. And think something bad was going to happen to her. But now,
understand.
And so I've talked to my pastors and people I care about and went through that to know that I would never go through that again. And really, I'm so blessed to be with somebody who's so loving right now.
Isn't it a good feeling?
It's a wonderful feeling. And so I took God as my professional, help.
That's good.
It probably would have helped during the abuse to seek some professional help, and I think it wouldn't have lasted as long.
I'm a big advocate for that. Faith is a very big help, seeking our God, whatever faith we believe in, something that's higher than us, that can really help. I commend you for that.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you, Ron and Ramiro, for sharing your stories. I know it's difficult, but according to Dr. Paul Valbuena, the more you talk about it, it empowers you more.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
It does. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Valbuena, and thank you, Fleur, so much for having us.
Thanks, Fleur. Thank you, Doctor.
Ramiro, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And again, Dr. Valbuena, last words, your piece of advice to everyone or people who are being in abuse or in a domestic violence situation.
Sure. I think, those people may feel trapped, those warning signs, we can go up and down about warning signs of abuse, pay attention to your family, pay attention to your loved ones outside of relationship. And, if you kind of put it, think about it as, would you have your daughter or your son be in that relationship? How would you feel? Those are just kind of a curbside kind of words to remember, that education and empowerment and making people aware is, I think, an important piece that us outside, if we're not in an abusive relationship, for us to empower those other people to help those people in need.
Sure.
Thank you. And gentlemen, have a good night. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing
thank you,
your
Doctor.
story.
Wise words. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
Ramiro, I look forward to seeing you at a Lions meeting.
Oh, yes, sir.
Both are
If you need something,
Lions,
please let me know.
yes.
I'm here. Like I said, I've been through it. You've been through it. If you need someone to talk to, yell at, cuss, cry, I'm here for you.
I'd love to.
And vice versa. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
At this point, I'd like to oops. At this point, I'd like to thank our sponsors. There you go. I'd like to thank our sponsors who made this show possible and who continue to support us so that we can air a show every month, and it's every 9th of the month, and I had a very important family event that I had to attend last October 9th, so that's why we postponed our show to October 14th. But next month it's gonna be November 9th, and it's gonna be on a Monday, Tuesday in the Philippines. So before we bring in two expert lawyers, one from the Philippines and one from the USA, I'd like to air the F rounds if we're ready.
Okay.
So, guys, watch this one.
president of Taugama USA?
How does it feel? Well, it hasn't really sunk in yet, but there's gonna be a lot of responsibilities, a lot of work. So, but primarily is basically to help out brothers.
Huli na naman ako. Ang hirap naman itong live na ito. Diyos ko, nababaliw ako. Napakita ba yung F rounds? What about the winners? Nung purse at saka ng $100, our sponsors at that time, that was 2 weeks ago. It was Sharon Baisan who gave.
Hi guys, I'm with Sandy and he's claiming his prize for the FMagazine rounds, and it was actually the
Thank you for watching.
100
Something, yeah.
So he got $100. So it's a very fun healthcare. Thank you for sponsoring the show. Okay, bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Congratulations!
So again, thank you Ms. Sharon Baisan for sponsoring the coach purse sa last show namin, and the winner was Heidi from Surprise, and then Grace on Healthcare for the $100. At this point, I'd like to bring in a couple attorneys as our guest resource speakers. I have a labor rights lawyer and chairperson of the Filipino Women's Rights Group, Kaisa Ka, and Secretary General of the political organization, Kilusan, the Movement, whose mission is to create genuine freedom and democracy for the Filipino people. She is the lawyer of Jennifer Laude, the Filipino transgender who was murdered in 2014 in a motel northwest of Manila after the murderer finding out that she was actually a transgender. Please all welcome Attorney Virginia Laksa. Wala akong palakpak live kasi. Attorney Virginia Laksa Suarez. Ako rin nagko-control.
Yes,
Thank you for bearing with us, Attorney Suarez. We can hear you.
Yes, good morning, Fleur. Yes, good morning, good evening. Good evening, America. Good evening, Arizona. And good morning to all our televiewers.
Attorney, we'd like to know how your paano dyan sa Philippines kapag may victim ng domestic abuse or domestic violence?
Yeah, here in the Philippines, it's really so difficult because of the culture. You know, there is this culture of silence na when it comes to relationship or domestic or intimate relationship. That is why it is so difficult for women partners to speak up. But the problem is, if you keep your silence, then the more you will be abused. And we were brought up with the idea that home, our home is the most secured place. That's why we will always tell our children, stay at home because you're safe at home. But on the contrary, it is at home where girls or women are actually being violated. It is at home where you are being slapped. It is at home where you experience physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, verbal abuse, all forms of abuses. That is why it is something that really that is really problematic here in the Philippines. And our culture is contributing so much to further the violence because our culture, that women, especially here in the Philippines, it's Catholic, it's predominantly Catholic, and that the teaching that women should be submissive, that it's normal for women to keep their silence, that whatever happens at home should not get out of the home. Whatever it is should stay at home. Everything that happens at home is stay at home, and that's the reason why violence or domestic violence keep on happening. And that is why it is important for us to really start changing that kind of mindset. That, from the very beginning that we raise our children, we should encourage our girls to speak up.
Speak up.
Really, yes, to speak up. We do not tell our children, manahimik ka. No, diba? We don't tell our children, dyan ka sa tabi. Because ganun yung nangyayari. And that holds true with our boys. Because of the culture, our boys are likewise, their feelings are suppressed.
Yes.
Yeah, the feelings are suppressed. It's like when you are emotional, or when you're a boy and you are emotional, or you speak up about your emotions, it's like you're like a woman, as if there's a problem if a boy starts to speak up, or if a boy starts to get emotional. So that even boys are actually being abused because their feelings are actually being suppressed. So, and when there is a violence at home, it extends and expands to other places like school. And there is so much sexual harassment, there is so much abuse in schools.
So, totoo yan, attorney, no? Ako, I think I'm a little different. Like, when I was working at Mayo Clinic, one of my mentors told me that I was different from kasi stereotype ka na Filipino, medyo hindi assertive, but then one of my mentors told me that I was so assertive, and yet I think I was a victim of some sexual harassment when I was in high school, and like what you said, it has to start from the home, and the parents need to teach their children to speak up. So let me share my story real quickly. Nakapalda ka, uniform, I commute, going to school, yung katabi ko, mararamdaman mo, may hahawak na lang sa'yo. I think it's very common. And because bata pa ako niyan, hindi pa ako kasing assertive, hindi ko kinol yung attention ng perpetrator na, hey, what are you doing? That's not acceptable. Walang ganon. So you just take it. So, nahipuan ka, nahawakan ka sa masiselang parte ng katawan mo, it's not okay. It's not welcome. So, you have to say something. And no one told me to do that. And I came out strong, pero hindi ko alam na gawin yon. Kasi hindi ako tinuruan na maging ready na itong mga bagay na to pwede mangyari sa'yo sa labas. But social media is very powerful, and we have this platform, we have FMagazine, we're teaching people to speak up, to know, to educate them, and you're sharing your expertise with us. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Fleur, it's not easy. In the many cases that I'm handling now, involving women that abuse women and abuse girls, when a woman speaks up, when she decides to speak up, when a girl speaks up, that is not the first time. Many times, it's already the nth time, it's the 10th time, it's the 100th time that she has already been abused. Why? Because at home, it's like abuses, it's like slapping, saying vulgar words, or everything is being normalized. And that's why
kasalanan ko pa.
Question.
Kasalanan ko pa.
Question Yes. Kasi tayong mga babae talaga, yung nature natin talagang magsasalita talaga tayo eh. Pero minsan, sa sobrang pagsasalita, hindi na natin malaman who is really listening and who is really understanding. Kasi there's difference between listening and understanding, right? So parang, kaya yung mga babae, we talk and yet we allow to be beaten, to be hurt, right? Unlike men, inamin na nga nila, yung masculinity nila, hindi sila talaga magsasalita kasi maghihiya sila for one, kung ina-abuse sila. Sa ating mga babae, tayo okay lang, release natin yung nagsasalita tayo. But I have a question for you, attorney. Ikaw ba, dealing with all the clients who are abused, nag-aano ka rin, do you go to a psychiatrist? Or at one point in your life, parang, teka muna, parang ang dami ko lang naririnig na abuse, parang ako ako ba magiging abuser na ba ako o na-abuse na ba ako? Parang gano'n. Ikaw as a lawyer and as a woman.
Okay. Ako, I grew up also, from a family where women, are like being discouraged from talking or from speaking up. And I saw it from my parents, kaya, ibig sabihin, matindi yung bugbugan, gulpihan sa loob ng family. I witnessed domestic violence right inside our home. But in the many cases that I handled, I've never seen a psychiatrist, but I talked to a lot of psychiatrists, to a lot of psychologists. Why? Because I would always be needing, or I would always advise my clients to undergo psychological tests, or for children to undergo, psychological counseling, because they need that. So at the very and it is also liberating whenever I talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist about my case, because talking to these people, really, you learn a lot. And all these things that I learned a lot, I pass it to all my clients. And here in the Philippines, it's not normal,
Yes.
It's like there is a stigma whenever someone sees a psychiatrist. There is that stigma. So pati yun, it is being kept secret. Of course, in other countries, it's just normal. And especially now during lockdown, there are so many girls, so many women suffering from mental health issues. Kanina tinanong ni Fleur, how are women now considering na naka-lockdown? From the report of the PNP here in the Philippines, na bumaba daw. Sabi 800 ang incidents of violence against women reported.
Kasi mas marami ngayon attorney yung buntis eh.
Reported to police. But then the problem is kaya bumaba, baka magandang tingnan natin because they are locked down. They have no way to report the violence. Diba? Maski na ang cyber sex, tumaas din. Kaya malaking problema. We have to root where the problem is coming from, to understand why all these things are happening. We have this culture, what we say, the patriarchy. It is the idea of looking at men as a superior gender and women as an inferior gender. There's a problem immediately there. And then, between partners at home, in a marriage, or even in a boy-girl relationship, there is this unspoken idea that a man, should carry the relationship. It's like a man is the one in charge of the relationship, and that the woman should simply submit to a man. But the man, they tend to own their partner. In a marriage, like husband tends to own the wife, or in a boy-girl relationship, they tend to own the girlfriend. And there is the problem. When you look at women as somebody that you can own, unconsciously you are looking at women as an object. And an object,
Obsession, possession.
You can own an object, you can possess, you can use to the point of abusing it, you can actually dispose an object or even replace. So, that is exactly what's happening to women partners. Diba, pag tinignan ng kapartner nila na akin ka, pag-aari kita, asawa kita. That's
sa una masarap yun, attorney. Sa una masarap yun, being possessed, and you feel, oh my God, he's obsessed. But when he is mentally unaware na parang teka, so the obsession and the possession is going beyond the border na.
Yeah, sandali, out of proportion na, di ba?
Oo, sandali, teka lang.
Alam mo, I teach, whenever I teach, I always tell these girls na when the boyfriend starts to say, akin ka, that should be considered a red flag. Because we are not in a slavery period where women can be owned. We cannot be owned. No, because when we are owned, when we are possessed, then we will be used, abused, disposed, replaced of, like, I mean, the same manner that objects or computers or cell phones are being treated.
Pero,
that's
Attorney Fleur, it also happens to men eh. Yung mga babae. Meron ako kakilala dito sa Pilipinas, grabe ang pagka-obsess at saka possess.
Uy,
papunta na sa ano.
Teka muna, favorite song ko pa naman yung Akin Ka Na Lang. Ni Morrissey.
Alam mo, Flor, Morsa, no? Okay. Tama ka mo dun sa binanggit mo that there are also possessive women. But being possessive is entirely different when men look at women as someone or something that they can own. Being possessive is entirely different. But then, of course, there are really girls or women who treat their boyfriend as a project. Alam mo, the case that I'm handling now is, yung bang tinitingnan nila na, kaya ko itong baguhin, poproyektuhin ko to. Yung parang, there are so many women, and then to, fall for, bad guys. And then, pero the objective is, baguhin ko ito. Diba? At dahil yung kakabago dun sa ganong objective, sila na mismo yung nasasaktan na bubugbog. At
I think I can relate to that. We'll talk about it later.
So, attorney, para sa mga abused women in the Philippines and men as well, because now, hindi lang babae, abuse is universal. Where can they go for help?
Right now, maganda. Our society is improving. Our laws are improving. Now we have what we call, of course, we have the BAUC, we have the Magna Carta, we have the Sexual Harassment Act to protect girls and women, kahit sa mga school. But we also have this Safe Space Act. We have the cyber law also, to protect all girls or all women. But diba? It should really start sa bahay. Really raising our children na matuto silang magsalita. Na kanilang pakiramdam at matuto magsabi. Kapag naabuso ka, preventing violence against girls and women should start from acknowledging or recognizing that you are actually already being violated. Because there are so many who are in intimate relationship do not recognize that they are already being violated. Diba? Why? Because they look at things as something normal. Because alam mo yung pag-aari sa babae parang na-normalize na. Kaya ang laki talagang problema. Kaya
laging kino-connect sa salitang mahal. Pagmamahal.
Minsan, kapag ang babae nagsimula ng magsalita, when they start to talk like, I was slapped, yes, I was physically attacked, but actually when he's not drunk, he actually loves it and is so sweet. When a woman starts to talk like that, that is already a red flag. It means that the woman is already suffering from what we call a battered wife syndrome or a battered wife
Kasi nagkakaroon ng psychological effect sa kanya.
Yes.
Either or nagiging parang delusional and nag-illusion na sila yung ganon. You know, I've seen a lot of women like that.
Right.
They tend to justify na parang kasalanan nila.
They blame themselves.
Yes. The importance of this kind of discussion is, this is really something that I really appreciate you, women, Fleur, I really appreciate. Because this is something that, this kind of discussion should really go down to the communities. Because these are not the things that are actually being discussed at home. Diba? Hindi ito pinag-uusapan sa bahay pero kailangan siyang pag-usapan para matuto magsalita ang mga bata. Now they can go to meron children's desk. There is also the women desk. And there are several women organizations. Women here in the Philippines can actually also go to our organization. But then, kailangan merong group of women who can actually encourage women and girls to speak up. Because violence will never stop until and unless that woman starts.
You have the courage to talk.
Remember, the perpetrator of violence will always tell you, wag ka nang magsalita, no? Or,
magbabago na ako.
Oo.
Mahal kita. Pinakamatindi yung trigger mahal kita.
We're always, we're always encouraged. We're always encouraged, like, to keep things secret, or to keep things to ourselves, or to keep within the bounds of our home. And that's why I always say, it is at home where we are always violated.
Kasi yung kultura kasi natin right?
Yes.
Nakakatakot kasi ngayong pandemic. You said kayo naman, 800 na lang. Ang nakakatakot kasi yung effect nung walang nagsasalita, naka-lockdown kayo. Excuse me, chef, di ako makalabas. Yung ganon. Inipon mo ng inipon. Kasi dalawa yung pwedeng maging epekto nun Either or maging matakang ka, or praning ka na. Mag-stay na lang ako, praning ka naman, praning na lang tayong dalawa, praning na din ako Yung di ba yung ganon? Dalawa yung, ang masama kasi yung epekto yung nakakatakot lagi.
Oo. At if we're not able to correct it among ourselves, it will become an intergenerational problem. Because whatever our children see in us,
yes,
they will become like that when they become a woman, when they become adult, or when they are already in a relationship, they will do the same thing. Kaya
it will be like coronavirus. It will pass through. It will be like coronavirus. It will pass through with one hatching. The abusing and everything, right, Doctor?
And that's why it's really important. It's really important to encourage everyone. Sabi ni Dr. kanina, when you start to speak up, it's a healing. It becomes a healing.
Yeah.
Actually, it's empowering. But really, when you start to speak up, it liberates you. It is so liberating to speak up. It liberates you from that very bad experience. And the more you talk about it, the more that you realize, this is how long I have already been violated. And then you start to recognize it. And then you start to have that result.
Accept
to change.
and let go.
Yeah. And very
meron akong parang out of the box na question sa'yo.
Yes.
Have you ever had an experience of a client na sinasabi niyang abuse siya, and yet minamock up niya lang pala, hindi naman talaga siya abuse. Hindi naman talaga siya na-abuse. How did you handle the case?
Actually, there are so many abuses.
Kasi merong mga babaeng minsan na obsessed and possessed. So, ganon din yan, di ba? Tapos, they will mock up na parang, ang papalabasin ko, ako yung kawawa, ako yung nanalo. At the end of the day, ikaw pala yung abuser talaga. Paano din yung deal?
Usually, I tell the client, I once had that when I doubted the story being narrated to me. So I requested that I talk to the other party so that I will get the whole picture of the relationship.
And then that's over the time that you can decide.
Yes, and sometimes I will just tell them, okay, maybe it's better for you to be the one filing the complaint rather than her or rather than him. I tell them who is the better person to file the complaint. Especially, for example, if it's an annulment case, for example, they are already resolved to annul their marriage. So you have to analyze who's really at fault. Yeah. But then, so you have to talk to both parties and then advise who is in a better position to file the complaint or the petition, so that it will be a sure win inside the court.
Okay. Attorney, mahal ka ba?
Mahal kita, Mosang. Alam mo, kailangan mo nang kausapin si Iman, saka si June. Alam mo yung estor ko?
I love the estor ko, brothers.
Pero hindi si Iman,
para estor ko rin ako.
Attorney, hindi si Iman ang i-bring up ko sa screen natin. Although Iman is just behind the screen. I'd like to call in naman another lawyer here in the USA. He's actually an immigration lawyer. Pero he's so involved in our community, and like you, he's an advocate for for everyone to speak up. Ang dami niya na natulungan ng mga Filipinos dito sa Arizona. I'd like to welcome Attorney Lemuel Carlos.
Hello. Hi, Attorney Lemuel. Hi. Hi. Good evening, Panyero.
Magandang umaga pala sa Pilipinas, ano?
Oo, at magandang gabi dyan.
Thank you very much. So I'm sorry I joined late. I had a little bit of technical difficulties earlier, unfortunately.
All of us.
So
it's okay. It's a tie.
I'm afraid I missed a lot of the juicy part of the discussion. However, I am from an immigration law perspective. I have had quite a bit of experience with domestic violence. In that. There are provisions within the law that will allow both men and women who are abused or battered or abused in all different ways, because it's not just physical, it can be financial, mental, emotional. There are so many different ways of abusing somebody. There are provisions within the law that thankfully still have not been done away with, whereby the immigrant, who often is in the, I guess in the weaker position and often afraid, there are provisions whereby they can still avail of the law and achieve their immigration goals. I've seen too many people walk through my doors, dozens now for over many years, where mostly women, but sometimes a lot of men also are just afraid to death because they say, my spouse is going to get me deported, or I have I don't know anybody here. I'm afraid. They'll send me back home in disgrace to my country, and that, from the Philippines, from Europe, Africa. It happens all over the world where people come here with all of the promises of the American dream, and they wind up abused. They wind up being sex slaves. They wind up being prisoners in their own house. I've had women that were given $50 a month and forbidden from speaking to their relatives, or they could speak to their relatives, but they had to speak in English. They couldn't speak in their own language. They were constantly monitored, or they were put inside the room and told not to come out until the spouse came home. So there have been so many examples of egregious behavior where the dynamic is even made worse because of the fact that the abuser also has the power of whether or not this person can stay in the country legally. And so that adds another dimension of an unequal power structure where the person being abused just feels like they have no leg to stand on, because even though they know they're in the worst situation and they shouldn't be in this relationship, they feel like they have no other rights, that if they don't continue being in this relationship, they will be deported, and often that means a disgrace for the immigrant, and it's so unfortunate. However, there are provisions in the law in the United States that thankfully, again, have not been done away with, even under the current administration, whereby an immigrant does have rights, and there are shelters, and there are organizations that will provide housing, they'll provide clothing, they'll provide money, they'll provide legal services. I have helped many people, sometimes lo bono, sometimes pro bono, depending on the resources. Some of them have friends that are able to pay. So, when that's the case, and that's great. But there are some situations where, as a member of the bar here in Arizona, we are encouraged to have, several hours of pro bono work per year, and a lot of my pro bono work is dedicated towards women and men that avail of what's called the Violence Against Women Act. It's VAWA, however, it does apply to men as well. It applies to same-sex relationships, because same-sex marriage is legal in the United States. So there are immigration benefits for same-sex couples. So if the abuser can be a man, can be a woman, can be someone of your same sex. It's just so that's been my experience with domestic violence. And again, I echo so many of the things that you say that in Tagalog they say nakakahiya. Hindi ako pwedeng umuwi sa Pilipinas dahil pagtatawanan lang ako, or they feel so ashamed because they feel like they failed.
Attorney, na-overwhelm ako sa kwento mo. Hindi ko na-realize na, domestic violence, it's like, affects so many,
It's
like,
huge.
a wide range of, issues that you just brought up. Like, it's so unfortunate, lalo na yung mga bagong dating dito, and you're telling us na ganito pala yung situation nila, and marami sa mga kapwa Pilipino natin ang may ganitong problema. So, does it give them, like, or does it help them to get their immigration status, or are they being sent home, or ano nun?
Well, if they're able to get their immigration benefits, they don't. The good thing about the Violence Against Women Act from the immigration perspective is it's completely confidential. So oftentimes the spouse, once the abused spouse is able to escape, syempre nagagalit yung abuser kasi they feel like that they haven't done anything and it's their right to be a monster, and how dare this person do this? So they want to do everything in their power to disgrace them and to deport them. So they'll inevitably call immigration and make sumbong and say like, this person used me and blah blah blah. Well, the good thing is it's completely confidential. Hindi sila pinakikinggan. If we file a Violence Against Women Act case, for so long as there's enough proof, and a lot of these women do, and men have proof, they take pictures of their bruises, they take pictures of the destroyed clothing, they keep they keep the videos, they keep the recordings, the text messages, and so there's proof. As long as there's proof of this domestic violence, they don't even listen to the abuser. They know that that's part of the course. They know that they're gonna do that. So I've had a lot of success in helping people do this. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult because even getting the proof, because the abused spouse doesn't want to call the police because they're afraid. Baka ma-deport sila. They don't want to go to the hospital because paano ko yan babayaran? I have no money. Hindi sila binibigyan ng pera. So there's sometimes there's a lot of things. There are challenges to creating the proof, but we're able to do in this day and age where there's cell phones and you can take screenshots and you can take pictures. And you can send, you can record messages, and you can get affidavits from friends.
There are
other creative ways.
Ang question, meron na po bang na-deport? Na cases kang naharap na you were able to handle na na-deport yung babaeng na-abuse? Meron na po ba?
Fully no.
That's good. That's good.
Thankfully naman I haven't. And you'd be surprised. I even have some men that have availed of this and also have not been
I do believe them, yeah. Yes, okay,
so,
you're back.
Yeah, so I just had to move from the other room because there was a little bit of noise there. But yeah, so it's been and one of the things is it's not an easy process, but I find it so gratifying. I find it so fulfilling to be able to help somebody.
Wala.
Narinig ba?
No.
Are you able to hear me? Because I'm not able to hear you guys. Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, ako lang yung hindi nakakarinig. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Question as an individual, since I know that you work in an immigration there, does this make your advocacy to help people abused as an individual?
No, wala. It's okay, it's okay.
Main advocacy, obviously, my biggest advocacy as an immigration attorney is to try to keep families together no matter what. But it is one of the things and it's not, not a lot of people, like I said, I've been doing this for about 15 years and I probably had a dozen cases.
So it's not like there's hundreds of people coming to me with this situation, but when they do come through my door, it is something that I definitely have my heart and soul into. In fact, when I was a second year law student at University of California at Berkeley, where I went to law school, that was actually my one of my clinicals that I took was immigration law, and my first case was a battered woman from China. So that's where I first got my experience as a law student, and then I thought, wow, this is really crazy how the just everything stacked against them, and you want to be able to give them the tools to be empowered, to be able to avail of why they came here and not have to rely on their abuser or not have to think that their future is completely tied up with this person that's just making their life a living hell. So it's really great when you're able to give that kind of freedom to somebody and that kind of empowerment. And they're damaged, so it's one step to get them their immigration papers, but there's still a long way to go. And they've suffered they're suffering from trauma, PTSD. They still need, and they're still newly here in the country. So they still need a lot of job training, experience. They need community, and luckily, a lot of the abused women from the Philippines that I've encountered here in Arizona, there's a really good community. We're very, and Fleur will tell you this, we're a very small Filipino-American community compared to Los Angeles, New York, Chicago. I mean, we're tiny, but we are very, very strong. We're tight, and we really take care of each other. I mean, when there's something going on,
That's good.
we're super, like, I really am proud of
You need to
myself.
transfer to Arizona now.
So,
We should get help me. I will transfer to Arizona.
inabot na pala tayo ng halos 2 oras.
Oras,
Sobrang
yes.
hindi gusto yung oras.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I got to join at least kahit paano.
So,
Sir Will, I'm very thankful kasi I'm here in the Philippines. Nakakatuwa because I know that my fellow Filipinas or Filipino are being taken care of because I have so many friends like in LA who's a victim of that, and now she's in a rehabilitation center na nag-ano siya, nag-therapy, and I know she's not doing well kasi nagkaroon ng trauma sa kanya. If I had known it earlier, maybe I could call up someone. But the only thing that I can do for her is to pray for her. She's okay. I rarely spoke to her, but still in the rehab area. She cannot work now because of the PSP niya.
Well, the important thing is she's away from the abuser. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
She's gone.
The abuser died, killed himself in front of her.
Wow.
So, what was it?
That's crazy.
The
That's
guy's
a
alcoholic and
abuse.
yeah, the guy's an alcoholic and then kills himself in front of her. So I was like, so glad I can and she's in LA.
Almost na, syempre, we're talking mostly about physical violence, but there are so many forms of other violence like sexual violence, psychological violence, emotional violence, verbal violence. I handled this case where a woman is always, every day on a daily basis, was being told, bobo ka, boba ka, ang pangit mo. You can imagine
who
Oh
was
my God.
abused and
So much.
affects you
And it happens in my
psychologically.
kids all the time. Because they don't
Yeah.
speak English with an accent. They'll say you're stupid. You don't learn how to speak English. You're so dumb. How can you can't speak? You know, and then yung mga pagmura na hindi, you know, they're from the province, they're not used to yung mga fuck you, mga ganun. Yeah.
Naku,
Yes.
paano naman yung ano, mataba ka, baboy ka, tusi.
Di ba physical violence yan. Kasi tinitira ka sa physical. Hindi ko kaya tanggapin yun.
Diba? That's psychological violence. So there's so many forms. So it's like violence against women is 24/7 in all forms, in different forms. So and that is why we should always have this kind of discussion so that women will start to speak up and learn from us, or learn that yeah, it's okay to speak up. It's okay to tell your story.
And have that choice.
Yeah.
We didn't go it. To become a victim is not an option. It's always a choice to get out. So you have to make a choice. When you have the courage, yes, we do have the courage. Yes, we can talk. But do you want to make this as your choice?
Right.
So get out.
Yeah. And getting out, look at your situation, you know, would you let what's happening as being like, let's say I'm an abused woman, and would I let my loved ones be abused? Why would I not let other people get abused and let myself get abused? So I think you need to, like what you said, attorney, recognize it, acknowledge it,
Yes.
you know, and do something about it. Speak up.
Yes.
Find a friend, go somewhere else. There will always be help available. And speaking of help, ang resource number sa US is 1-800. Hindi ko ma-flash sa screen kasi hindi na, it would take me
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, or I always advise them to go, for children to go to Department of Social Welfare and Development. And also, each barangay or LGU or police station has children and women's desk.
Okay. So, pwede sa barangay din.
Yes.
Pwede sa barangay. Huwag mo lang kamag-anak yung barangay. Huwag mo lang kamag-anak ng abuser mo yung barangay. Hindi, pero pinaka-importante talaga to all our fellow Filipinos and Filipinas, have the courage. Make a choice. Please make a choice. Get out.
Ako, I must say, let us break that culture of silence, because you only stop violence when you start to speak up.
Correct. And ikaw po, Sir Joel, anong message mo sa kanila, sa lahat ng yung mga darating pa sa'yo at lalaki pa, sa mga
It's the same thing. Nothing is worth it. One more day with an abuser is too much. You need to get out. Get out. There are resources. There's help for you, and it's not worth it. Nothing is worth being abused. You just need to get out. Get out right away.
Ang hirap kasi kinukontrol ko ito, tapos kinukontrol ko, hindi kayo magkaintindihan. But I think we're on the same page so that you guys can understand one another, and if you're being abused, get out, like every one of you said, get out. But it's so hard. I realize that it's very hard.
I know it's a process. It's a very long process. Kumbaga sa artista, mahabang motivation ito at internalization to realize that I have to talk, I have to have the courage. Pero huwag kayong laging matakot, because kung meron kayong kung walang support sa family, kung meron kayong mga kaibigan na willing to help you, go with them. Kasama kayo, pagpatuloy kayo. Kung kaibigan kayo ng Attorney Virgie Suarez, Mr. Lemuel, yes, you will be safe.
You know, the problem with violence, it is always linked and intertwined with other problems. There are so many women who is staying in an abusive relationship because they think they cannot afford it economically, because they are economically dependent on men. That's why it is important, no? When we help women, we also think of ways how to make them, no, self-sustaining. Yeah,
Saka yung
they're
mga
able
anak,
to sustain themselves. Yes.
emotional pattern yung mga bata. That they
Yes.
want. Yung parang burden kung kalma, mahirap ka, apat ang anak mo. Siyempre, ilalaban mo yun. Paano mo, tapos sobrang close dun sa dad kasi yung father nga, pag hindi pag sober, ang bait-bait na ama, very yung gano'n, diba? So parang, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's difficult, no? It's difficult, but the effect, the impact, the implication to our children in the long run, when we get out of the relationship, it's huge, and it will also help them. It will also liberate them. Kaya tama yun, hindi madali. It's a long process, but somehow, somewhere, women should start. Diba? Yung violence against women, we start it from preventing violence against girls. Kaya talaga it starts from home.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Attorney.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Fleur.
so much, and
Thank you,
have a
Aura.
good day in the Philippines. Happy Thursday, Jan.
Yes, Fleur, thank you so much, and thank you, Mosang. Thank you,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ang dami ko na nagbaong English sa inyong lahat. So,
Buti yung last section na yun, I know.
the red,
Thank you so
akala ko yung red
much.
flag sa menstruation lang, pero yung pala yun.
Mosang, we should be able to really recognize the red flag. Like when a guy tells you, akin ka, that's a red flag.
Alam ko, ang ganda-ganda ko. Akala ko siya ng Mr. Right pag sinasabi yun.
Oh, Mr. Right again.
Okay, Mosang, kwentuhan tayo minsan. Kung saan din mo sa Pilipinas.
Oo, punta kita dyan. Marami akong kwento sa'yo. But I'm very thankful to you. You attorney.
Ang dami natin natutunan ngayon. Grabe.
Yes, so sobrang dami. At mas gusto kong intindihin pareho ang sa akin as an individual. Mas gusto kong inawain ng abuse. At yung parang, kasi naiintindihan ko na yung na-abuse. Gusto kong maintindihan yung tao na na-abuse. Pero pagtulog din ang sinabi mo, nung nasa proseso ako na parang, kasi nga ginagawa mong proyekto. Pero siguro dahil instinct ng isang strong women na parang, if I can only change one person like that, pwede mo na pakita na kaya pala nila, pwede pa rin pala sila magbago. Minsan mabigyan natin ng chance, mahanap natin yung meron talagang nagbago, nag-ayos.
Yeah.
So, dumaan sila sa proseso. I'm really hoping for that. But you know what? This is a beautiful world. And love is universal. Diba? Nagkakaiba lang sa kung ano yung paano nila hinahawakan yung pagmamahal. Ang ending nito at ang simula lang naman ng pagiging abusive pagmamahal or kung ano yung pinagdaanan ng pagmamahal. Diba?
Oh. Universal, pati ang domestic violence is also universal.
Yes, universal.
Yeah. Thank you again, attorney. We'll see you soon.
Yes.
Salamat sa time
Yes,
and
thank
the
you so much.
patience.
Yeah. Thank you.
God bless you.
Bye. Mosang! Ano ang take-away mo sa ating topic ngayon bago tayo mag-bye-bye sa ating mga viewers? Thank you so much for staying, guys. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Ako, ang take-away ko talaga as the whole conversations na nakikita ko kahit pagtutulong tayo with the men and the women and both sexes. Sa akin talaga parang yung sinabi ko kanina na becoming the victim is not an option. It's always a choice for you to get out, not to become a victim. Yes, we'll go through a process. It's a very, very long process. Yes, we love the person, but yes, we can still love the person, saving ourselves and praying for him or her that one day, mababago rin. Hindi man sa panahon mo, maaaring sa ibang panahon, ang pinaka-importante, nakita mo at nakagawa ng paraan that you can get out of it. Not only to save yourself, but to save another soul. Yun lang yun. So have a choice. Make a decision. And it's about that.
Ayun. Wow, ganda naman, no? Thank you so much, Mosang. Ang dami namang meaningful words na sinabi mo, ha? Pero ako naman, yung takeaway ko, pinaka-takeaway ko tonight about domestic violence, it's universal. It affects not only children, women, the vulnerable population like the elderly, but as well as men na sobrang like Ron is like what he's really like a tall guy, you know, nakita mo yun, but it's yung domestic of violence, you know, hindi talaga namimili, 'di ba? Can you imagine them being abused as well? But ang takeaway ko kay Dr. Valbuena is like speak up about it, talk more about it, 'di ba? And then from attorney Suarez naman, recognize, you know, find ways to recognize. And then sa akin, acknowledge it. Kasi dapat may insight ka that you're being abused. And if you don't have any insight, you don't have any thinking that, yeah, I need to get out of this situation, you're never gonna get out of a situation. And again, yung lagi mong sinasabi na mahal mo kasi yung tao, di ba? So parang namamask niya yung physical pains mo, you know? So I think it's acknowledging, recognizing the fact that you're in an abusive situation. Get out of it. Like what you said, you have a choice. Talk about it. Find a friend. You find a social worker. Find a healthcare professional. Find someone to talk to. And hopefully, these people that you open up, sinabihan mo ng problema mo about it, will take you out of the abusive scenario that you're in. So with that, Mosa, maraming salamat.
Last na last, message ko sa mga nag-aabuso. Hey guys, we can listen.
Ano, inistorbo ko ng Iman. Ano sabi mo?
Sa mga nag-aabuso,
aha.
hey guys, we're ready to listen.
And,
it's time to change.
And you know what? Yung professional help, hindi lang yung sa na-abuse, yung abuser din, kailangan din nila ng professional help eh.
Yes,
They themselves also need to have an insight to like, you know, they need to stop the abusive behavior. And if they cannot do it alone, they need to get professional help. And help is available to everyone. Kaya, ayun, diba? Maraming salamat.
Pwede ba ako mag-promote?
Pwede mag-promote. Pero bago ko makalimutan, salamat sa lahat na nagpasensya sa amin ngayon. Thank you so much for staying with us. And kahit na nagkagulo-gulo kami sa sumakit yung ulo ko talaga. Pero salamat po for staying and watching the whole show. Dami ko natutunan, lalo na rin yung kay Atty. Lemuel. Yung sa show, diba? Grabe.
Saka medyo kapatid na ako. Kapatid na ako sa mga Filipina friends natin there in America, especially in Arizona. You have help. So please, have the courage to go to them, seek help, please.
And for
Hindi po kayo mag-report.
Right, and for those who are not able to speak up for themselves, if you witness an abuse being happen, you have the responsibility to report that to the authorities.
Correct.
So, diba? So we cannot be silenced as well. Yun lang.
Yeah. And my executive producer of Film Billionaire is watching right now, so I need to go back to work.
Hello. Grabe na sa set ka ng diba? Pepito Manila, thank you so much naman
today.
Very understanding naman sila. And good evening, Arizona, and good morning, Philippines. Thank you so much again. So we will see you again on November 9th. But in between, you can hang out with me with Hanging Out with Fleur.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ms. Fleur and FMagazine. Bago pa ako bring mo pa, I'd like to promote the book of my friend, tama ba ito? Fighting. Ito, si Aling Green is also a victim of abuse. She's a mom.
And this book is a gift from his son, si Robert Abatras, my friend. And we have a project, our Gadget of Hope. If you buy this book, part of the prize will go to my project, a Gadget of Hope. I'm giving away a tablet for kids online school. Just you can message me. This is a very good book about a mother, for women. So congratulations, Abed. Buy the book. You can PM me or I'll give you the details. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations. I would want a copy of that book. Fighting. Is that fighting?
Yes, the fighting. You know, the fighting. Pag tinanong niya, ginawa yung Tagalog na fighting. You know,
fighting.
Ang anak niya ay gay, so ang boyfriend, she's maganda yung book. It's all about an abuse from her childhood, na na-abuse na siya mahal pa.
Alam mo, Mosa, nakalimutan natin magbasa ng mga comments. Oo, grabe. Cynthia Diritan, Joy Abanilla, thank you so much. Shout out to sino pa bang mga nandito? Diyos ko, kahit nakasalmin na ako, hindi pa rin ako makabasa.
My best friend in high school. Happy birthday, Maxi Navarro. Hello, Jaron. Si Ate Opel, yan, maipi.
Hindi ko siya
may-aring artista sa loob.
Hindi ko na makita yung mga previous comments. Pero maraming salamat. Norman, thank you for watching. I know you posted something earlier. Maki, thank you sa lahat na nag-support sa FMagazine. Ikaw, sino pa gusto mo pasalamatan? Iman and Marcia.
The owner of Artista Salon, Gio Anthony Medina Domelo, si June Bart, friend ko, and Arnel Saclolo. My best friend in high school, Maxi Navarro, happy birthday.
And Halo Halo Kitchen. And congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Driscoll, Aliyah, and Rob Driscoll. Congratulations. Kaya absent ako noong October 9, kaya October 14, kasi kinasal yung sister-in-law ko.
Congratulations!
But next month, Lady M, it's gonna be November 9, which is a Monday, and then Tuesday sa Philippines.
Yes, thank you, Cookie De La Rosa, for my hookup. Okay. And also handout from Dr. Jane Recasata.
Oh, hi, Dr. Recasata, thanks and first. Yes. Oo, pag
pinakita niya sa akin yung unang-unang file.
Thank you. Have a great night, Arizona. And good morning, Philippines. Bye, Mosa.
Love you, Fleur. Ingat.
Halo Halo Kitchen, thank you.
Iman, Marcy, thank you. And Papa.
Bye.
Salamat, Papa Jamil. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.